Good evening. I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Each week on Channel 3, I'm happy to talk about this interface between Christianity and medicine. And sometimes, that interface, that coming together, comes together in a marvelous and miraculous way. And I think this is happening this week as we've just had a very, very successful Strawberry Festival. And it brings me, as a Christian and a physician, back to John 15, where Jesus talks about abiding. And we're going to explore that a little bit. But also, at the same time, the largest healthcare system in the world, in a medical sense, is the VA system. And the Federal Practitioner, their standard peer-reviewed journal, arrived today. And lo and behold, it is also about abiding. And this is a concept that we do use in healthcare, especially in hospice care and palliative care. My daughter Maria, who's a physician and works in oncology at the University of Michigan, talks about abiding rounds. And this comes together today in a, as I say, near miraculous way that as I prepare to talk to you about a topic of this interface, that I can talk to you about this in terms of Scripture and also a peer-reviewed article on how doctors, nurses, chaplains, all of us, families who get together with people who have cancer or have terminal illness, they're going through a process of death and dying, and we need to understand the concept of abiding that the great physician Jesus talked about. Let me go first of all to the Scriptures. I'm going to use the King James Version of the Bible. I'm going to use just a few verses from John 15. Again, you may want to go back and look at this further, but I want to paint the picture for you so you understand. And then we'll talk about the Webster Dictionary definition of abiding. But first of all, Jesus said this, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every vine in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now you are clean through the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abide in the vine. No more than ye, except ye abide in me." And we can go on and we'll pick up some more of that Scripture later. But you see, Jesus is painting a picture of a strawberry plant. Also true, of course, for grapes. But the strawberry has the central plant, and then it has the vines that go out. Often 20, 22 vines or runners go off in different directions, and these become independent plants. But there's a connection back to the mother plant. There's an abiding. Just as Jesus said, "I abide in God, and God abides in me," and there's a connection. Now Jesus says, "I'm teaching you to abide, and then you will abide with other people, and there'll be a connection." And when you abide like that, then you can bear great fruit. And so this is the concept we're talking about in hospice care. And this is I'm going to just quote from the article in the Federal Practitioner, May issue 2012. Ellen Thatcher, a nurse practitioner, talks about the quality of life issues of abiding and the importance of abiding. She reminds us, you've heard of this, I'm sure, in healthcare, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Indeed, if we abide, if we establish a relationship with our patients and families trust the doctors and nurses, and that we all work together on a death and dying process, we add to the quality of life. We sometimes reverse a process where we think someone is dying. Doctors are called upon, especially in hospice care, to predict that someone's going to pass away within 6 months. Therefore, they're qualified for hospice, a federal guideline says. But doctors don't get it right. Some people look like they're going to live for a few months, and they live for a long, long time. And something marvelous is happening. And we believe, and doctors and nurses who do this work think a lot of it has to do with the concept of abiding. Well, I started off with the Scriptures, John 15. Let me go now to abiding from a definition of Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, just a standard dictionary definition, so you understand a little bit about abiding here. First of all, it can be a verb, to wait for, or to await, to endure without yielding, to withstand, or to bear patiently, to tolerate. So all these concepts, awaiting, withstanding, tolerating. So a doctor, a nurse, a patient, the family all come together and they unite in one purpose, and they're equal, and they share back and forth. They share spiritual concerns, emotional concerns, informational concerns, you know, about pains and medication and all these type of things. This is a very, very important concept. I'm going to switch to yet a third concept because I've taken care of patients now for about 42 years. So some things come to mind, and when I read this article from the VA, my experience with our former director at the VA came to mind, and this is something that he approved of in his lifetime, and I'm sure he would approve me using this as an example now. But when Mr. McNeil, Les McNeil, came to Clarksburg, I invited him to the Strawberry Festival, and he sat on our front porch and watched the parade with my father, Dr. Harold Almond, and they hit off marvelously. He was an older man and an excellent director. Lo and behold, later on, he developed a cancer. He did everything he could. He went for a bone marrow transplant. He did everything that a person could. But in the end, he was dying. And he called me into his room, and he said, Greenbrier, he said, you know, I have a couple requests, and this is the way I want to go through the process of dying. And I wanted to abide with him. I wanted to have the right body language. I sat on the bed. Sometimes doctors stand at the foot of the bed, but that's an authority figure looking down. Not a good way to talk to a death and dying person, to a person going through the process of dying. So I sat by Mr. Les McNeil's bed, and I even held his hand. You know, body language is also reaching out, touching someone. Abiding can be physical contact too. And we talked about his request, and I honored them, and he appreciated that, and then in a few days he passed away. And I can think about that at this time because that was not, again, my first concept, but it was probably one of the most important ways that I saw abiding in action. Someone who very much had always been in control, a Marine, a pilot, a hospital director, and yet at the final moments of his life, abiding was the concept that he wanted to have in place. There's certain synonyms. I want to complete the dictionary definition a little bit. Synonyms to this is to stay, to continue, to bear, to abide with, to conform to acquiesce in. This includes enduring and continuing. I think of another example of this too. Whenever over the past 42 years, we've had different doctors who've been president of our state medical association, which is a high honor. In our town, Dr. Jake Huffman served at that level, and Dr. Reed, myself, others have served as president of state groups like the American Academy of Family Physicians. So when a doctor gets a chance to do that, it's a high honor. It's a prestige position for our own fellow doctors to elect us to that position. Well, this doctor it was his turn, and he was highly honored, and there was going to be a ceremony, and it was going to be at the Greenbrier Hotel, and you know, big deal, and lo and behold, when his turn came, he got a call from a patient, and his patient said, I've been your doctor, I've been your patient, you know, like for 40 years, a generational thing. I'm dying, and I have a request. I know you have this ceremony at the Greenbrier. I know you want to go, but I have this request that you be at my bedside when I die. And my dying is coming. It may even overlap with your ceremony. And what can you do? Can you help me out? I need your comfort. I need that abiding, one person with another. And this doctor, lo and behold, decided. He said, okay, I will be at my patient's side. That's my doctor-patient bond that I have. It's greater than any ceremony, anything else, any fame, any fortune I can have. And so he called up and he said, I won't be at my own ceremony. You go ahead, inaugurate me, have a gala in my name, but I will be with my patient. And that's what he did. And the patient passed away the very night of his inauguration. And I think there's something powerful in that. This enduring, continuing in a relationship. So that's sort of the definition, isn't it? Let's go back to the Bible then and develop the next phase of this. So I want you to understand this concept of abiding as a strawberry too. Jesus is talking about a farmer pruning his vine and making the plant stronger through this process of abiding. And he says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done for you. Isn't that a powerful statement? Ask whatever you will, and it will be done to you if you go through this process of abiding. Sometimes healing is not just necessarily chemotherapy. It's not necessarily antibiotic. It's not necessarily a miracle drug of sorts. Sometimes it's a relationship, an abiding relationship, and we heard a talk. Maria and I, my daughter, went to a medical meeting in Philadelphia, and we heard a talk about the goodness of a doctor. And it was an interesting talk. It was a surgeon came to talk to us, and he gave the example of a man who got well, and it was miraculous. And the surgeon went to the man later and said, here you were dying. Everyone knew you were going to die, and you didn't die. And what was it? And he said, well, he said, my doctor came in and spent time with me. It was already 10 o'clock at night. He should have gone home to his wife, his children. He should have prepared for the next day. And we talked about this, we talked about that. And he stayed at my bedside. And he said, I got well because of the doctor. And he held on to that concept, that alone, if it will, maybe it boosted his immune system, maybe something medical can be explained by it, but it was a relationship that was going on. And Jesus promises that. He says, if you abide in me and I abide in you, you can ask whatever you want and you will receive it. And then he goes on and he says, if you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. So of course there's instructions to follow. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. All of us would rather be healthy and not have to get sick. That's a concept. To follow God's commands of health, and we can do much better in our life. Ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love, Jesus says. So Jesus is teaching us that the energy is passing through from God to Jesus to, in this case, his disciples, and then he promises his disciples, you will do even better things than I have ever done. He goes on and says, these things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy might be full. So this is another concept here. Abiding is a quality of life issue, isn't it? A lot of us are moping along in life. We're not really happy. We're not really fulfilled. We're not really getting what we want out of life. And I've had people who develop a cancer, and they become cancer survivors, and they will declare, they'll say, this having cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And when the first time I heard that, I said, how can that be? But what they're talking about is they came up against life, they faced life, they knew that life is limited, that it's finite, that we're only here for a while and then we're going to die. But once they faced that and it overcame death, at least at that moment, every day that they have is a day of joy for them, a day of fulfillment. They feel honest, they can go to someone and say, I love you, I care for you. I don't know when I will pass this way again. Well, I'll have the chance to say that, but I'm not going to put it off any longer. I'm going to say what I mean and mean what I say, and I'm going to abide. I want my relationships to be meaningful. And people who have survived cancer then say they have a more meaningful life. Jesus is talking about that. My joy is complete. Your joy is complete. A lot of things can happen. Let's look at this. And if you're inclined, there's a book called Peace at Last: Stories of Hope and Healing for Veterans and Their Families. And this is from Deborah Grassman, who also is well-known, nicely well-known, in death and dying and palliative care. And it talks about the abiding as a biblical concept and also a part of servant leadership. Servant leadership is another way to talk about that doctor-patient relationship that I was explaining to you with the doctor who was president of the State Medical Association and chose to stay at his patient's side because his patient requested that. Abiding is, of course, sometimes obeying the rules. Abide by the rules. That's a minor look at it, but it's also empathy, and it's something that we teach students, and we don't want them to hide behind the white coat or hide behind busyness or something like this, but don't hide, abide. It's something that Jesus again taught. And I use this verse in this chapter of John, the 15th chapter. I use this often with my veterans because a veteran is someone who, at least when they joined the service, they signed up and said, I love my family, I love my nation enough to die for my nation, for my family, for my country. I'm going to give and give and give and give right up to death, because when they defend us, if they go overseas to Afghanistan or Iraq or other troubled spots in the world, we don't know. They don't know what's going to happen, but they're willing to give their life. And so Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." This is verse 13 of chapter 15 of John. "Ye are my friends, if you do whatsoever I command you." So Jesus is teaching. And Jesus, of course, is talking about his own sacrificial death on the cross and resurrection from the dead and following God's commands. But you can say that anyone who would give their life for their friends, you learn a lot from animals and nature. And I've seen on the internet and email a story of a fire. I guess it was in a chicken house, and it looked like everyone was burned up. All the chickens were burned up and so forth. But they began to do an inspection of the chicken house afterwards, and the wings of the mother chicken were over the little chicklets underneath. And the mother had died, but her wings protected her young, and the little chicklets underneath were safe. They had survived the fire. Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. And then Jesus says, "I call you friends." And you can see this example in chickens or in different animals where they sacrificially give. Mothers do this too. We just came through Mother's Day. So many examples here in May, not only our own Strawberry Festival about abiding of the strawberry vine, but mothers who will do anything for their children, and we honor our mothers because of that. Jesus said then, "You are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you." And he goes on and says, "Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth. But I call you friends, for I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, and whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he will give it to you." I remember again Mr. Les McNeil, our director, when he called me to his bedside, and he knew he was dying. And he didn't call me doctor. He didn't say Dr. Almond or Dr. Greenbrier. He said friend. And I didn't understand the full importance of that, though it resonated with me, and I appreciated that someone this powerful, and certainly we'd worked together over patient issues a lot at the hospital, but to have him address me as friend meant a lot. And you see that Jesus is there too. Jesus is saying to his own disciples, even though he's been their teacher, he says, I call you friends. And abiding rounds, when we do abiding rounds, or if you have a loved one who's sick and dying and you want to abide with them and they abide with you, get at that concept of friendship. Don't hide behind the white coat, or hide behind busyness, or hide behind a schedule or time management, or whatever we hide behind. Now, you can do this in a short period of time. This is a teaching article I'm reading from, and it's teaching people how to do abiding rounds. It only takes about 30 minutes. And the gist of it is, let's talk about quality of life. Let's not talk about temperature or food intake or weight loss or weight gain or vital signs. Let's talk about quality of life, spiritual life, emotional life, relationship life, all sorts of ways that we measure quality of life. And let's formulate a plan. I like it. There's a movie that was out a couple years ago that I saw, and it's one of those I might see again. Very seldom do I want to see a second movie. Just time doesn't allow this. But anyway, it's called The Bucket List. And it's about two men who know they're dying, and they make a bucket list, and they're going to do certain things before they die. And they do it, and that's what the movie's about. And it's a great idea, the concept of a bucket list. This quality of life rounds, this abiding rounds, includes sitting down talking about quality of life issues. From a standpoint of a practitioner, a doctor, a nurse, someone doing this, it's a matter of letting go. In other words, loose control over the agenda, let the patient set the agenda. Let go of issues, beliefs, experiences, feelings that we have. I mean, we put a lot of things on other people, don't we? I think when the Strawberry Festival comes, and we've had 71 of these, I have a certain expectation of what's going to happen. But I'm pleasantly surprised. Each one is unique, and after a while I get caught up in the moment and want it to go on and on and on. But the best way is to let go and just let flow whatever happens. Some of that's people dropping by. Some of that's letting people sit in my shade or our shade, my wife and I. Some of it's just being ready to help someone out in whatever way we can, or share the joy of the festival, share the joy of those wonderful photographs, the wonderful crafts, things like that. The creativity that is on display during Strawberry Festival Week. Letting go and appreciating that, and not being caught up in any other agenda. Because it's so easy to do and lose the present moment. This is a psychological transformation. It's not an easy feat, and it can be uncomfortable. It takes efforts and to let go. And this is an article for practitioners, and so if someone's out there and they're highly trained in their field, it's hard for them to let go of that professionalism. After all, they spent 12, 13, 14 years acquiring that professionalism. To be called doctor or so whatever the title may be is different than just being called friend. But abiding is letting go. Body language is important. I mentioned sitting at the bedside, looking someone in the eye, listening, not necessarily talking, is important. This is all part of abiding. So listen to how Jesus taught about this, and some warnings that he had at that time. He said, I'm commanding you that you love one another. Jesus made that very plain. And I think it was Mark Twain who said, it's not the things in the Bible I don't understand that bother me, it's the things that I do understand It's hard to love one another, isn't it? But that's a very straightforward command. It's not hard to understand. It's hard to do. But Jesus commands us to love one another. And he said the world's going to hate us. He says, if the world hated me, it will hate you. If they persecuted me, it will persecute you. And so those are hard lessons. So people, why do people hide? Why don't they abide? Because it's easier, it seems easier in the short run to not abide, but just hide behind a title, just get on with the busyness of life, but miss the opportunities for quality. And Jesus goes on and says, "Ye shall bear witness, because ye have been in me from the beginning." In other words, there's a lot of fruit that's coming down the line if we abide. If you can create this comfortable environment, don't wait. The final lesson tonight, don't wait until there's a death or dying situation, until there's hospice, until there's someone in the family so sick they're dying. Sit down and say to family tonight, if you're watching this, let's have supper together every night. Let's share 30 minutes. Let's share whatever time we can. Let's have a powwow. I always think of the Indians gathering and sitting around smoking the peace pipe, sharing around a campfire. Let's do some quality of life things, and call each other friend, and abide. You abide in me, I abide in you, and get that concept. Well, until the next time, this is Dr. Greenbrier Ahlmann thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Special thanks to those who put on the Strawberry Festival every year, and we have the Vine, the Strawberry Vine, to talk about abiding. But also special thanks to Channel 3 for this opportunity to come your way each week. I've been abiding and coming for 35 years, and so I hope there's many more chances to do that in the future. We'll see you next week.